Good to be back for a session on faith, democracy, and globalization. And this time around, as for the session, corresponding session in the last iteration of this course, we have as a guest Miroslav Volf, who used to teach philosophical theology here at Yale at the Divinity School and Philosophy Department. And he's one of the foremost Christian philosophers working today. And in his last, 15 years or so, has devoted a great deal of time to the questions of political philosophy. So I'll make a few introductory comments, then Nick's going to come up, and then Professor Blair. So democracy and globalization, as I've mentioned before, I think that's one of the really important issues that we are facing today. Idea of democracy is extraordinarily popular worldwide, even though it's true that there are many ideas about what democracy is floating in people's minds when you talk about democracy, and there are even more kind of differences in actual practice, democratic practices. And especially significant, I think, for us is a liberal democracy, which is what we are concentrating on this session and have readings on. And it has emerged in the West as a one way of dealing with clashes created by competing religious loyalties. And it continues to be one of the abiding problems of liberal democracy. John Rawls believes that the diversity of reasonable, comprehensive religious, philosophical, and moral doctrines found in modern democratic societies is a central problem for political liberalism to address. Let me take my jacket off because I'm very warm. I don't know whether you are. There we go. Thank you, Nick. I'm gonna even roll up my sleeves and. There we can go. That obviously becomes a significant issue in the context of globalization and increased pluralization of social spaces. And what I want to say is make just two very simple comments. One comment concerns our conceptions of democracy, and the other comment concerns our understanding of faiths. And I think what we need, here's a thesis, for you resist, I'm sure as you resist it if you want, and I'm sure you will partly. Here's what we need. I think that we need faith-friendly democracies and democracy-friendly faiths. Faith-friendly democracies and democracy-friendly faiths. I will not speak too much about faith-friendly democracies because Nick has written a great deal about that issue, question of, at least in certain conceptions of liberal democracy, of bracketing specifically religious voice from the public arena. And the consequence of that becomes that people of faith feel marginalized in the political life. Liberal democracy becomes, as one of the theologians has expressed, a theologian who has a knack for interesting formulations, Stanley Hauerwas, has expressed, liberal democracy then becomes a secularist ideology that masks a discriminatory program for policing what religious people can say in public. Now that's overdrawn and it's a caricature, but you get the basic point that he's making. That probably isn't, that kind of a setting is not quite right for democracies, and it isn't quite right for religious people themselves. It creates kind of politically reclusive sectarianism, or if you have a majority, more robust groups, politically aggressive fundamentalism. And I think it's important for those reasons to have religious folks, if not for other reasons, also express their opinions and in public as religious opinions, right, and shape public debate in this way. Now, this has all sorts of raises all sorts of questions if we even accept that this is desirable, and that is, for instance, questions whether can citizenry engage in meaningful public debates on central issues if they come from such wide diversity of perspectives, or can democratic procedures which do not rest on something that is common but rest on particular convictions, can they somehow give legitimacy to the power of the state to coerce? That's a very important issue, I think. Let me just say a few more words on the challenges for faith traditions. What does it mean to have something like democracy-friendly faith traditions? And one way to think about it is to say that all religions are at the bottom the same, so that all different values that different religions espouse are in fact all the same. Some people think that that's the case. I'm not fully persuaded. Alternative position would be kind of those are limiting positions, is to say that religions represent radically different ways of being human, and therefore that the single polity cannot hold them all together. It has to splinter on religious lines. I would suggest that there must be, and that there is, a sufficient overlap in values between religious traditions, and only if there is such an overlap can one make religious traditions kind of democracy-friendly. Now, the other question might be, do religions have sufficient stake in being democracy-friendly? Exclusivist truth claims. Now we come back to the question that we've been discussing from the beginning of this course. Exclusive truth claims characterize many religions, and the question is whether those exclusive truth claims are compatible with pluralism as a social project. We've had already this debate. I don't need to rehash this debate, and I think that much of success of democracies around the world in the context of resurgent religions depends on whether religions with exclusive accounts of their own religious life can somehow also affirm pluralism as a social project. I would suggest also that many religions may have good reasons to embrace pluralism as a political project. Now, faith traditions have practical reasons to adopt to a situation of social pluralism. That's not the case in all countries. In many countries are still relatively homogeneous, but increasingly we inhabit pluralistic social spaces. I think faith traditions may have also moral motivation to do so. The principle of reciprocity. You can formulate it, what you don't want others to do to you, do not do to them. That's silver rule, as I was told, right? The golden rule is what you do to others as you want them to do to you. One or the other either of these expresses the principle of reciprocity. If there is such a principle of reciprocity which is robustly embraced, right of one religion to be publicly active, insert itself, will also lead to the right of all others. Well, maybe not all others, right? There's a practical problem of high level of religious diversity, right? And then the question is, what does it mean to give equal opportunity to each of the religions for state to be neutral with regard to all comprehensive worldviews? But maybe Nick can address some of these questions. Now, my third point is that faith, the first one was, right, that faiths have good reasons, practical reasons, they have moral motivation. And third is that faiths actually can change. It's not that faiths are these immovable, unchangeable sets of beliefs and practices, but rather they are dynamic formations. And the good indication of that, good proof of the possibility of change, is the largest religious body on the planet, which is the Roman Catholic Church, in regard to this particular issue, right? Vatican II in the 60s, early 60s, one of the major achievements of that Second Vatican Council was to open up the church to embrace both human rights and also some form of liberal democracy. So, in conclusion, key question is, will democratic theory and practice change to accommodate religious voices in the public sphere? That's one side of the question. Second side of the question is, will faith traditions be able to positively advocate pluralism as a political project? That's the kind of fate side of the question. And to tie this with the rest of the course that we were, explorations in the course, two great challenges that we have identified at the intersection of faith globalizations are these. Challenge one was religions as agents of peace rather than fomenters of conflict, right? That's the peace-conflict nexus of our exploration of the relationship between religion and globalization. I would say that successful integration of religious people into democratic political process is a precondition for religions functioning as agents of peace. Second challenge was religions as potentially, hopefully, humanizing agents in the processes of globalization. Now, obviously, I think bringing religious voices to bear on large issues of the day is essential if we are to draw on religious traditions to somehow contribute to humanization of globalization processes. Both of these challenges, I think, demand for religious traditions to have a public voice in the context of a pluralistic democracy. Now, I've been under my time, and that's pretty good, so Nick's on.
Oh, you're 2 minutes over your time, aren't you,
2 minutes over?
Miroslav?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm 3 minutes under.
Thanks very much, Miroslav.